Okay, so we have this assignment on contracts this week. The first one is actually an easy one. It's a discussion about contract with minors. I know a few of you already answered that. So after reading actually chapter 9, you should answer that question because you'll read about that in chapter 9. The assignment I really wanted to talk about is the assignment called your contract. So let me pull that up and go over that. So for this assignment, you actually have to find a contract that you have entered into yourself. This could be a gym membership, an app on your smartphone, a purchase of an automobile, or maybe you rented a car. Some of you have rented an apartment. That would be a great contract. Any goods or services that you have purchased, right? Don't use any free services, like don't use your Instagram contract or anything like that. No free movies. Movie streaming is fine, like Netflix does nothing free, right? You have to use the one where you're actually paying for it, right? So again, it's a product or service you purchased, not an employment contract, not a non-disclosure agreement, not any other kind of agreements. It needs to be a contract for a purchase of something, right? If you can't find a contract in your name that suits this assignment, you can use a contract of your parent or your friend, right? If you're using your friend's contract, just make sure that friend is not in this class and using the same contract, right? The other thing that's really important is you have to include a full copy of your contract. That means the entire contract. If you're doing an automobile purchase contract, that's going to be tons of pages. You have to include that. Now, luckily, these days, we have a lot of contracts in digital format. So you can just attach it in digital format. Some contracts you will also find they have the user terms and agreements online, such as, if you're doing something like Netflix, they have their agreements online. If you have a contract with T-Mobile, you can find their agreements online. Provide me the link to it. I cannot grade your paper if you don't submit your contract because I have no way of looking up your answers. You can't even complete the paper without the full copy of your contract because you wouldn't know where to look up the answers, right? So you can submit multiple files with this assignment, just like with any other one. If you only have a written, if you only have a printed copy of the contract, just scan it or take a pictures of the pages and submit those, right? And then I'm going to go through these questions, but do you have any questions about what I said so far? Anybody? We can also ask questions at the end, right? So, so these are the questions you need to answer. So the first question is, what is the contract for? Is it a service, a purchase of some kind of purchase of a product or a membership? Be specific. So let's say you purchased a car at Honda. You can just write this contract is for a purchase and the financing of an automobile I purchased from a Honda dealership, right? Who are the parties to the contract? The parties to the contract would be you if you're using your own contract, plus the other party. In this case, it would be the Honda dealership, right? Briefly describe the consideration of the contract. Now, in the first chapter, at the beginning actually of chapter 8, it talks about 4 elements of a contract that you will learn about. The 4 elements of a contract are, well, one of the elements is consideration. Consideration means there has to be some sort of exchange. One way to think about it is, what's in it for me? Why am I giving away my money? You wouldn't give it away for free. If you gave it away for free, it would be a gift. It wouldn't be a contract. So you're getting something in return. So if you're doing this on your Honda automobile, your consideration is to receive the car itself. That's your consideration. The consideration for the dealership is to receive money from you. If you paid it all in cash, the cash payment. If not, they will receive monthly payments, including interest that you're paying, right? So that would be consideration. How are the terms accepted? I know from experience, if you purchase a car, you usually go to the sales office and then you sign, a bunch of papers. You don't necessarily sign them with ink anymore, but you click on I agree, I agree, I agree. Some of it for car sales will be signed in ink, right? So just describe that, right? Now another question number 5 is the contract executed or executory? So And we haven't covered this yet. I don't expect that you have read all 3 chapters on the contracts yet because it's only Monday, but you will learn about this when you read these 3 chapters. A contract is not executed until it is fully performed. In other words, all parties have fully performed their duties or what they promised to perform under this contract. So if you're purchasing a car from Honda, and Honda delivers the car to you, they have performed their part, but let's say you are financing the car for a period of 5 years. You're making payments for 5 years. Until you have made your last payment, the contract is executory and not executed because it's still being performed. Once you have made your final payment and the Honda turned over the title to you, it's executed. But an ongoing contract is executory. Another word of executory is actually ongoing, right? The next question is a free one. Is this contract legal? Hopefully you will use a legal contract. I doubt anybody will use an illegal one, right? One of the requirements, one of the elements of a contract is legality, meaning a contract has to be legal to be valid under law, under the court. If you form a contract with somebody that's illegal, let's say you form a contract to deliver drugs to somebody, and you can agree on all you want to agree. This contract is not legal because the subject matter is illegal, drugs, right? So that contract would not be valid, right? Obviously, all of you are going to answer yes to this question. This is a legal contract, right? Did you have legal capacity when you signed it? And were you a minor? Some of you might not be 18 years old yet, or maybe when you signed the contract, you weren't 18 years old. Maybe they asked also your parents to co-sign for you because you were a minor. So that's something you would answer here, right? Now, question number 8 is tricky. Does this contract need to be in writing and meet the writing requirements? This, I believe, is covered in chapter 9. Not every contract has to be in writing. I want to first identify what it means for a contract to be in writing. A written contract is a contract that you can go back and read the terms and conditions. It doesn't have to be printed out. It doesn't have to be signed in ink. A digital contract is also a written contract because there's a document that exists somewhere, right? Whether it's digital or printed doesn't matter. It's a written contract. Nowadays, a lot of contracts are signed with a program called DocuSign. If you ever signed a lease, most of the landlords use DocuSign to have the lease signed. Those are valid signatures, right? Electronic signatures. So unless you need a notarized signature, which you don't need, well, you would need that for something like a home sale, real estate sale. Other than that, most contracts, a lot of contracts do not require a notarized signature. But with a notarized signature, you need actually a wet signature and a fingerprint and all that stuff. But other than that, a written contract could be digital as well. However, not all contracts need to be in writing. Some of the contracts that don't need to be in writing, or that I should actually say that do need to be in writing, based on what we learn in the textbook, is so contracts that involve interest in land. So real estate contracts need to be in writing, right? Contracts that cannot be performed within a year after the date of formation. Let's say you're hiring somebody to build you a shed in your backyard, and it's going to take more than, or let's say build you an in-law unit, not a shed. A shed might be quicker, but that's going to take more than a year, right? That contract has to be in writing, right? Any collateral secondary contracts, such as co-signing for the debt of somebody else, that has to be in writing. Promises and made of for consideration of marriage has to be in writing. So just simply saying I do is not enough. And number 5, under the Uniform Commercial Codes, contracts for the sale of goods priced at $500 or more have to be in writing. This is only for the sale of goods, not for a service contract. You can hire somebody to paint your house, which could cost you $2,000. It does not have to be in writing because it's likely to be completed in less than a year. But if you go to a paint, if you buy paint that costs more than $500, you would have to have a contract, right? Some kind of a written contract agreement, right? The opposite, well, not the opposite, but we're comparing a written contract with a verbal contract. The other ones can still have a contract, but they are not written down. There's no document that exists. So remember to go back to these 5 requirements when you answer this question. Don't answer something like, well, these terms are so complicated, nobody would remember those. So yes, it has to be in writing. It doesn't have to be in writing just because people couldn't remember the terms, right? So make sure you look at these 5 points. I mean, the 5 points are also on the slides. I think they're part of chapter 9, right? Or it could be 10. Just look up writing requirements, right? Let's see, we were, that was writing. Okay, number 9, how can this contract be discharged or canceled? Some contracts have a lot of contracts will have a clause saying this could be canceled with a 30-day notice, or after 1 year you can renew or discharge this contract, right? So that'll be written in your contract. If you have a written contract, you really need to use a written contract for this assignment, right? Has this contract been assigned or delegated? Now, we haven't covered that yet either, but you will find clauses in your contract that, or you may, not all of them, but some of them, that either allow or prevent assignment or delegation. So assignment is when you assign the rights of a contract to somebody else. So let's say you're doing a contract for an apartment lease. It's very likely that the lease is going to have a clause in it that's going to state if this lease can be assigned to somebody else, which means you can sublease it to somebody else. If you're a student, sometimes in the summer months, you're not going to spend the time at the university town. You might sublease your apartment, right? And actually a lot of landlords will allow that. They have some kind of conditions that have to be met when you sublease, but they might allow it, or they might say this cannot be subleased, right? That means it cannot be assigned. Delegation is delegating duties. This wouldn't, you're not likely to have a contract like that. This is sometimes if you have a contract where you're going to perform some work for somebody, you could delegate the duties that you have to do to somebody else. Let's say you have a contract to paint somebody's house, and now you're hiring a subcontractor to paint it for you. That would be delegating duties, right? Let's see, that was 9, no, that was 10. Number 11, are there any third-party beneficiaries to this contract? If so, who are they? A typical beneficiary in a third-party, a third-party contract. I mean, sorry, I'm talking too fast. A typical contract that has beneficiaries would be a life insurance contract, right? If you're doing this contract on a life insurance policy that maybe your parents took out, right? That's, by the way, a service contract. So that would be, the beneficiaries would be who would receive the money if something happened to the parents, right? There are other contracts that could have third-party beneficiaries. They would be listed in the contract. Don't think about, oh, who else could benefit from this arrangement? You know, it doesn't matter who else could benefit. If they're not in the contract, they're not officially third-party beneficiaries. They would be listed in the contract. Question number 12, are there arbitration clauses in the contract? If so, what are they? This was covered in chapter 2. Arbitration is an arbitration agreement is an agreement where you actually agree that you will not sue the party in court, but instead you will go to an arbitrator and solve the dispute in arbitration. So some contracts have that, some don't. Just look really carefully in your contract. And number 13 is, does this contract require release of liability? If so, describe it. Release of liability would be, for example, if you are doing this on a gym contract. I guarantee you all gym contracts have a release of liability where you state if you get hurt on your own at the gym, you will not hold them liable for your injuries, all right? And then number 14, after completing this exercise, do you think this contract was fair or one-sided? Make sure you list the questions in order, in this order. Use the question number. This is not an essay. This is just, you have, these are 14 questions you have to answer. So put the question number and then your answer. Provide full sentences. Don't just say yes or no. and submit your papers by Sunday night. All right, that was my spiel. Now, any questions you have? Anything I can answer? Okay, how about, does anybody have an idea what type of contract they might use after hearing these requirements?
I think for this assignment, I will probably focus on the idea of the gym membership one.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, it'll be easy to find the, most of these answers will be, most of these will be addressed in the gym contract, and it's not too long of a contract. So some contracts are very long. Do not do a real estate contract, right? Do not do a home sale of your parents, or even if you bought a home yourself, don't do that. Apartment rentals are really good ones. So anybody else, any idea what they might do?
I was gonna do a gym one too, probably.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Any questions about this assignment or these questions in here? If you happen to have questions when you're doing this assignment, or when you're thinking, oh no, should I do this or this contract, or whatever questions you might have, just reach out to me. But remember, I don't really log on the weekends, so do it before Friday afternoon, right? If you have any questions, right? You can also always run it by me before you submit it if you want to. If you want to make sure you get full credit. This assignment is worth more points. It's worth 30 points. And I do look up every single question on your contract when I grade this. Yeah. So you want to put a lot of effort into this, and it's a good exercise to learn about contracts too. Yeah. Other questions I can answer for you? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. All right.